The golden gates of the palace had never seemed to weigh so heavily on his spirit. The billionaire Sheikh, a mountain of silk-clad authority, stood alone beneath the blazing sun, the opulence around him glaringly cold against the storm that churned within his chest. His piercing eyes, usually sharp and commanding, flickered with an unbidden uncertainty. Today, power felt hollow. Outside the shimmering walls of his world, the Emirate's bustling marketplace thrived in chaotic harmony. Stalls overflowed with vibrant textiles, the scent of exotic spices weaving through the dry desert air, mingling with laughter and hurried footsteps. Here, beneath colorful awnings and beneath the hum of 1,000 stories, life pulsed raw and unpolished, so unlike the pristine halls where the Sheikh reigned supreme. His gaze landed on a humble figure weaving gently. Among the crowd, a young woman, her hands lined with the wear of hard work, her eyes soft yet resolute. She was a teacher, her modest robes a stark contrast to the grandeur surrounding him. In a quiet moment beneath the sizzling sun, she slipped a few coins across a rough-handed vendor's palm, paying for a boy's meager meal with a modest smile concealing a world of sacrifice. The billionaire Sheikh's breath caught. That gentle act, so simple, so utterly alien to a life ruled by luxury, struck a chord deep within his guarded heart. The boy's eyes lit up with gratitude, warmth spreading through the cramped space around them. But it was she, the teacher, who held his gaze captive. Who was this woman whose kindness fractured the icy shell he wielded like armor? Conflicting emotions surged. Astonishment, envy, an unfamiliar tenderness. His mind wrestled with the absurdity of fascination rooted not in power or beauty, but in the quiet strength of compassion, raw and unspoiled by wealth. The Sheikh, accustomed to commanding armies with a glance or bending fortunes with a word, found himself powerless, haunted by the image of her gentle defiance against a world that had given her so little. The luxurious world he inhabited had never forced him to reckon with vulnerability. Yet, in the marketplace's cacophony, an unsettling unrest stirred. He found himself returning, again and again, drawn by an invisible thread, glimpsing her kindness ripple through the faces of those she touched. He watched as she met hardship with courage, her laugh a fragile light amid dust and shadows. As dusk draped the sky in shades of amber and violet, the billionaire Sheikh's resolve shattered beneath the revelation. In an unguarded moment, they crossed paths once more, this time in the heart of the crowded market, where fate twisted cruelly and a whispered secret tumbled from her lips. The words struck him like a tempest, unfolding a truth that would unravel the foundations of his carefully constructed world. The man who commanded empires stood exposed, trembling between desire and duty, as the woman whose kindness had imprisoned his soul became the unwitting keeper of his shattered pride. In this city of gold and grit, their lives tangled irrevocably, setting the stage for a battle far fiercer than any he had ever faced, the war within his own heart. Before the next secret of this dazzling emirate unfolds, make sure you're part of our growing caravan of stories. Many fate-twisting moments await, and I don't want you to miss a single heartbeat. Hit like if the heart of this billionaire sheikh has already captivated you. Tell me in the comments, from which city do you follow this saga, and which twist do you think is coming next? Your passion for these dramas inspires us to keep telling them. Thank you for being here. The sun had long dipped beneath the horizon, surrendering the sky to a cascade of burning amber and shadowed violet. The palace gates, colossal and unyielding, gleamed faintly under the emerging moonlight. But inside, the opulence felt suffocating. Golden chandeliers casting fragmented light over the marble floors, thick velvet curtains muffling the distant murmurs of the city beyond. Yet none of the luxury could quiet the tempest raging within the billionaire sheikh. He stood in silent contemplation amidst the grandeur, his mind spinning relentlessly with the moment's weight. Her whispered confession still reverberated in his ears, a secret that shattered the brittle veneer of control he so tirelessly maintained. The woman, so gentle, so fiercely compassionate, had unveiled a truth dark and dangerous, unraveling everything he believed about the world he ruled. His fingers clenched into fists, the silk of his robe stretching taut across knuckles that had never trembled before. He was a man accustomed to absolute power, to bending fate with a mere command. Yet now, that same power felt meaningless. What use was dominance when confronted by a vulnerability he could neither crush nor escape? The memory of her eyes, icy blue yet suffused with courage, haunted him. How could someone so fragile in appearance wield such unyielding strength? She was a beacon amidst his shadowed realm, and the secret she carried, it threatened to ignite a war that might consume both their worlds. Unable to bear the oppressive stillness, he strode toward the ornate balcony that overlooked the sprawling emirate below. The city's heartbeat pulsed through the chilly night air, the distant calls of merchants closing their stalls, the soft lullabies whispered by mothers huddled near flickering lamps, the faint strains of oud weaving melancholy through alleys dressed in moonlight. Her world, vibrant, raw, and unprotected, was so far from his palatial prison, and yet, like a moth to flame, he was inexorably drawn to it. His thoughts were interrupted by the softest of footsteps behind him. She appeared as if summoned by the night itself, her silhouette framed by the opulent drapes. There was no fear in her gaze, only the quiet resilience that had first captivated him. Yet tonight, beneath the veneer of calm, he sensed a storm as turbulent as his own. "Sheikh," her voice trembled, betraying the steadiness of her expression. "I never intended to burden you with my past." Her words hovered between apology and defiance. He turned slowly, his eyes searching hers, desperate for answers and unable to conceal the turmoil that raged within. "You carry more than burdens," he whispered, voice thick with conflicted emotion. "You carry a storm, one that could bring this empire to its knees." She held his gaze, unflinching. "My secret is no mere whisper, but it is my truth, and I will not let it destroy me or you." The tension between them crackled, electric and suffocating. The gulf of their vastly different worlds seemed to stretch impossibly wide. Yet in that charged silence, a fragile thread of connection wove itself tight. Suddenly, a hesitant step forward. His hand, heavy with silk and gold, reached out instinctively, but stopped short, trembling at the precipice of contact. The air was thick with unspoken regrets, with the weight of choices yet to be made. "Why show me this?" he demanded, the roughness in his voice betraying a man unaccustomed to vulnerability. "Why risk everything for a truth so dangerous?" Her lips parted, a flicker of pain passing over her face, a mosaic of fears she dared not fully reveal. "Because you see me as I am. Not the billionaire sheikh who commands, but the man who hides behind a crown of gold and solitude." Her words carved deep into his defenses, unraveling the facade piece by piece. In that moment, the distant echoes of a life he had forsaken whispered through the palace halls, ghosts of innocence lost and love abandoned. Their standoff was broken by the sudden intrusion of the palace steward, his face pallid and tense. "Your Highness, urgent news. There has been an incident at the outer border. Something grave." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, the deadly calm of a man used to crises settling like armor once more. Yet beneath that armor, the fragile hope sparked by the woman's truth burned brighter, mingling peril with promise. He turned to her, the faintest shadow of a smile haunting his lips. "Our war is no longer just within these walls, and it seems your secret may be the key to surviving the storm." She nodded, resolute, despite the fear flickering in her eyes. "Then we face it together, for the sake of this city and for something more." As the moon climbed higher, casting silver light upon their entangled fates, the towering gates of the palace creaked open once more. Beyond, the night whispered threats and possibilities in equal measure. In that charged silence, the billionaire sheikh realized that the battle for his heart was only the beginning of a conflict that would shake foundations, break alliances, and reveal astonishing truths buried beneath centuries of sand and gold. But before any enemy could strike, before any secret could be fully unveiled, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place, an unexpected visitor, arriving under the cover of darkness, bearing a message that would shatter every conviction he held. And with that, the silence was broken by a single gasped word from the woman at his side. "She's alive." The silk folds of his robe whispered coldly against the marble floor, as the billionaire sheikh turned sharply toward the intruder's announcement. His mind, already a tempest of unease, constricted further. The outer border, an area seldom troubled, yet crucial, now bore the mark of chaos. But what did this mean for the fragile alliance forming between him and the woman who dared confide in his solitude? Her eyes, bright with unshed tears, held his gaze as he closed the distance between them. She was no longer just a figure weaving through the marketplace, but the catalyst of his unraveling world. "She's alive," she repeated, her voice barely a whisper, yet heavier than any command he had ever given. The words settled like ash in the opulent air, suffocating and undeniable. His fingers curled into a fist, the veins beneath the silk pulsing with a power he fought to contain. Alive meant truth. Alive meant hope. But it also meant peril. The secret she guarded was no longer a silent burden. It was a weapon pointed at the heart of his empire. He paced, The vast chamber, swallowing his unrest. The flickering chandelier overhead cast fractured light, mirroring the shards of his fractured certainty. What game had been played behind his back? Which enemy had slipped so close, wrapped in shadows darker than the desert night? Her presence by the balcony door was a steady anchor. The soft scent of jasmine followed her, a stark contrast to the cold steel of impending war. She had stepped into his world, the golden cage of glass and stone, and now, with trembling restraint, offered him a lifeline that was also a noose. "What do you know?" he demanded, his voice hoarse but laced with the command of a man who once took entire kingdoms with a whisper. Yet now he was pleading for knowledge, for clarity in the swirling mist of doubt. She glanced away, biting her lip before answering. "Years ago, before I became a teacher among these streets, I lost her," she said, fingers tightening around the shawl draped over her arms. "My sister. They said she perished during the unrest far beyond the city." The Sheikh's breath caught. The sister, the ghost of her past, whispered heavily between them, a shadow neither dared chase until now. "But the truth," she continued, voice faltering under the weight of confession, "is that she was taken, captured by rebels who seek to destabilize your rule. She survives." His world shifted on an axis he had never felt. This revelation was a blow beneath the armor of certainty he so prized. It was a crack through which chaos and compassion bled side by side. "Why confess this now?" he asked, voice barely above the hush of midnight prayers, echoing faintly in the distance. "Because your enemies wield this secret like a blade," she said, fiercely. "Because you must know what they threaten, and because you are the only one who can save her." The distance between them seemed to compress under the weight of fragile trust and unspoken fears. The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, searching hers, searching for the woman beneath the teacher, beneath the secret bearer. He found a courage that defied the opulence and isolation of his throne. "I was lied to all these years," he confessed, voice low and raw, "and the truth burns more fiercely than any desert sun." She stepped closer, a hesitant warmth blooming in the cold room. "We stand at the edge of a precipice, but perhaps, together, we can leap and find a new dawn beyond the shadows." The wind stirred softly outside the balcony, carrying the whispered prayers of the city. Inside, two souls bound by fate and secrets prepared to challenge the storms gathering beyond gilded gates. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors swung open with a violent crash. A figure, cloaked and masked in the shadows, slipped into the chamber, his presence a chilling challenge to the fragile pact now forged. The Sheikh's hand moved instinctively to the dagger at his hip, eyes blazing with command and threat. The woman's fingers clenched tightly, her body tense as the intruder stepped forward, voice dripping with menace. "You were warned, Your Highness," the visitor hissed, voice cold as the desert night. "The past has a way of returning, and your hesitation could cost you everything." The tension snapped taut as a drawn bowstring. The Sheikh's heart pounded, not with fear, but with a growing fury ignited by betrayal and love entwined. The woman's gaze locked on the intruder, whispering, "This is only the beginning." And as the moonlight bathed the chamber in ghostly silver, the billionaire sheikh realized that the secret he guarded, the sister alive against all odds, was the fulcrum upon which the fate of his empire and his heart would pivot. The battle was no longer between kingdoms alone, but between truth and deception, loyalty and betrayal. His eyes, dark and piercing once more, fixed fiercely on the shadowed figure. "Speak," he commanded, voice a low thunder. "Tell me what you carry, for in your words lies the next war." The visitor's lips curled into a grim smile beneath the veil of secrecy. "She's alive," he echoed coldly, "but not as you remember. And she carries a message that will either crown you or cast you into exile." The sheikh's breath hitched. The woman beside him stepped back, eyes wide with a mixture of hope and dread. In that suspended moment, destiny poised on a knife's edge, the truth waited to drop like a blade, promising salvation or destruction. The golden gates behind them stood open now, an ominous invitation. Beyond waited shadows, darker than the night, secrets deeper than the desert sands. And as the first tendrils of dawn threatened the horizon, the billionaire sheikh whispered to himself, "If she lives, then so must the truth, whatever the cost." The cloaked figure stood unmoving, a shadow carved from the depths of night. The billionaire sheikh's gaze burned with a familiar command, yet beneath it flickered a fragile tension born from the secret with which the woman had just burdened him. "Speak," he ordered, voice low and fierce, "for your words may well be the turning point of all we've yet to face." A smile, as chilling as the desert wind, curved beneath the veil. "She lives, though not as you remember her," the visitor rasped, voice threaded with danger. "Years have changed her. The girl you mourned has become a weapon, and her message, a catalyst for upheaval." The woman beside the sheikh swallowed hard, the weight of that phrase slicing through her. Her eyes, still glistening with tears, rose to meet his. In their depths, she saw the fading line between hope and dread. "What message?" His tone sharp, but tempered by the whirlwind of anguish. This was no longer a matter of court politics or distant wars. This cut deeper, a blade pressed against the very heart of his fractured trust. The shadowed figure took a slow step forward, hands clasped in a deliberate display of control. One that threatens to crown you ruler of all the sands, or cast you into exile, stripped of crown and blood. The room held its breath. The flickering chandelier painted wild shadows against the marble walls. Outside, the desert whispered secrets with the shifting dunes. But inside, time itself seemed frozen beneath the weight of revelation. The woman's voice, barely more than a whisper, broke the silence. "We have to prepare. This is no longer just a political game. It's a war for survival, for our lives." The sheikh's jaw clenched, muscles taut beneath his flowing robes. The golden threads that embroidered his sleeves glimmered like fragile armor. Yet even they could not shield him from the storm swirling within. "Tell me everything," he demanded, voice hardened by years of ruling mercilessly, yet trembling with the invisible cracks now forming in his resolve. The visitor nodded once. "The sister you thought lost was captured by a rebel faction, trained in the shadows to serve their cause. She bears knowledge that could unravel the alliances that sustain your empire. Worse, she fights not only for survival, but to change the balance of power forever." The Sheikh's mind raced, images flashing without consent. A distant marketplace, a frightened girl taken in the night, a secret whispered beneath moonlit skies. Each picture a shard of a past he had buried beneath layers of silk and command. A sudden movement caught his eye. The woman stepped closer, every ounce of vulnerability transformed into steely resolve. "I know the risks," she confessed, "but the truth has a way of surfacing, and you cannot defeat what you deny." He moved to the balcony, the marble cool beneath his feet, and gazed over the city that sprawled beneath an endless sky. Lights twinkled like fallen stars caught in the desert's embrace, oblivious to the battles rising in shadows. His voice was quieter now, almost a confession. "To protect this place, I must face ghosts I thought long dead, and trust a woman who has shattered the walls I built." Her hand reached out, trembling for a heartbeat, before brushing against his arm. An electric touch that neither power nor silk could mask. "And I will stand with you, even when the sands shift beneath our feet." A cold breeze swept through the open door, carrying the scent of jasmine and distant rain. The sound of whispered prayers rose faintly on the wind, blending with the unspoken promises swirling between them. Suddenly, the heavy chamber doors burst open once more. A second figure hurried in, breath ragged, bearing a sealed summons. The Sheikh took it with an unblinking stare as the woman's eyes sharpened. "Your Highness," the envoy gasped, "there are signs of betrayal within your court. An alliance with your enemies festers beneath gilded smiles." The Sheikh's heart slammed against his ribs, each beat echoing a warning he'd long refused to hear. "Betrayal," he repeated, voice a low growl. "In a place where loyalty should be as unyielding as the desert sun." The woman's gaze locked onto his, fierce and unwavering. "Then we fight not only on battlefields, but within these walls. Trust will be our most precious weapon and our greatest risk." The Sheikh folded the sealed message, eyes narrowing as a new ferocity kindled within. "Prepare the guards," he commanded, "and summon those I can still trust." As the envoy left, the grand chamber grew still once more, heavy with anticipation. The fragile alliance between the Sheikh and the teacher now faced its harshest trial, a tempest stirring not just in the sands outside, but in the hearts of those closest to power. She looked to him, breath steady despite the turmoil. "This sister of mine, if she truly lives, what does that make the woman she has become? And what does she want with you?" His gaze darkened, haunted by a million what-ifs and maybes. What if her loyalty lies not with me, but with those who crave to see this empire fall? The candlelight flickered, casting their shadows long and intertwined against the opulent walls. The silk of his robe brushed cold against his skin, a reminder that beneath the crown lay a man both ruler and prisoner of fate's cruel game. With a sudden resolve that shattered his hesitation, he turned sharply. "Find her, before she finds us first." Her breath caught. The room seemed to pulse with unspoken danger as the night stretched on, holding its secrets close. Then, beyond the marble pillars, a soft sound, a measured, careful step. Neither a whisper nor a roar, but a presence that promised the dawn of a reckoning more brutal than any before. The Sheikh's voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. And the question remains, will she return as savior or as shadow? In the stillness that pressed against their skins like desert heat, the answer waited to be written in blood and sand. The room trembled with a tension so thick, it seemed to suffocate the very air between them. The visitor's masked gaze remained fixed, unblinking, as the Sheikh's dark eyes bore into him, sharp flames against the encroaching shadows. "She's alive," the visitor repeated, voice low, saturated with menace. "But no longer the sister you knew. Time and turmoil have carved her into an instrument of rebellion." The words fell heavily, echoing through the grand chamber, like the distant thunder of an approaching storm. The Sheikh's jaw clenched, fingers tightening on the marble balustrade as he struggled to anchor himself against the whirlwind of betrayals and half-truths. He glanced once at the woman beside him, no longer just a teacher, but a key-bearer of a secret that threatened to fracture everything they had dared to believe. "What message does she carry?" the Sheikh demanded, each word a snap of steel. The cloak-clad man's voice dipped into a cold whisper, a call to upheaval, a summons for all who thirst for vengeance. "If you ignore it, your reign will crumble like sand through a sieve. If you heed it, the sands themselves will shift beneath your feet." The woman's breath hitched. Her eyes, once so full of quiet resolve, flickered with shadows of doubt. "And her loyalty? Where does it lie?" The visitor smiled, but it was a blade wrapped in silk. "That is the blade you must catch, or the poison you will swallow." A silence stretched, thick and suffocating, before the Sheikh finally turned his gaze to the city that sprawled beneath him. Lights twinkled like scattered jewels, oblivious to the battlefield, emerging beyond ornate gates and polished marble. The scent of jasmine mingled with the desert's chill, a deceptive calm amid an ocean of danger. He felt the woman's hesitant touch as she reached for his arm. The contact was brief but searing, a tether in the storm. "We must prepare," she whispered. "This war is no longer only swords and spies. It's a battle for truth, for survival." His eyes darkened, haunted by memory and fear. "I have walked this desert alone too long, draped in gold and lies. Now I see the shadows I ignored have grown into monsters at my door." A sudden shuffle pulled their attention to the chamber's entrance. The palace steward appeared, breathless and pale. His hands trembled as he handed over a sealed scroll, an urgent dispatch from the outer borders. The Sheikh broke the wax seal with a deliberate stroke. His eyes devoured the black ink, each word igniting a new flame of fury and dread. "Betrayal festers inside these walls," the envoy gasped. "Allies have turned to vipers. Enemies walk freely in your court's shadow." The Sheikh's hands curled into fists, the gold embroidery of his sleeves biting into his skin. "Trust is a betrayal waiting to happen," he muttered, voice thick with bitter irony. He met the woman's gaze, fierce and unyielding. "We cannot win this fight divided." Her eyes shimmered with quiet fire. "Our worlds may be different, opaline towers and dusty streets, but they now face the same storm." He nodded once, a silent vow. "Gather my most loyal. Tonight, the palace becomes a battlefield." The soft click of the chamber's doors interrupted their grim resolve. The flicker of torchlight cast long shadows that danced like specters over the walls. From the gloom, a figure emerged. But not the visitor from before. This was a presence wrapped in danger, a whisper of silk and steel with eyes as unreadable as the desert night. The Sheikh's breath caught. "She's here." The woman's voice was barely audible, but the weight in it crushed the fragile air between them. A slow smile crept across the masked intruder's face. "The sister you seek has arrived at last." The night seemed to hold its breath as the figure stepped forward, each footfall a beat in the drum of approaching destiny. The Sheikh's world, once ruled by gold and command, now spun on a knife's edge. And in the depths of his gaze, where power met fragility, a single truth nestled. This encounter would either forge a future beyond all hope or shatter their lives into uncountable pieces. The whispered words that followed, sharp, sudden, inevitable, hung between them like a blade poised to fall. "She's not alone." The trimmed cloak of the intruder barely stirred as he stepped closer, the room thick with silent threat. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze bore into him, cutting through the shadows that gathered like a storm overhead. Each word the visitor spoke felt like embers falling onto dry tinder. "She's alive," the voice rasped again, cold as desert steel. "But the sister you mourn is gone. She's no longer the girl you remember. Time and betrayal have forged her into a weapon wielded by your enemies." The Sheikh's chest tightened, the marble beneath his fingertips cool and unforgiving. His eyes sought the woman's face, tracing every quiver in her expression, every flicker of pain and determination. This secret was no longer hers alone to carry. It was a burden they now shared, one weight of uncertainty. The masked visitor's smile was thin and cruel, like a serpent's whisper. A summons to upheaval, an echo for all who thirst for vengeance. It is a choice laid bare. Answer and watch your empire's foundations shift beneath you, or deny and witness its ruin beneath the sands. A silence fell, sharp and suffocating. The woman's voice broke the quiet, barely a breath. "Where does her loyalty lie? With us, or with those who seek to tear this land apart?" The visitor's eyes gleamed beneath his veil. "That is the dagger you must grasp before it pierces you." The Sheikh swallowed hard. The fragile trust building between him and the woman, now tested beneath the savage winds of fate. The opulent chambers seemed to close in, their grandeur hollow against. the terror creeping like a dark tide. He stepped away toward the balcony overlooking the endless city lit by scattered lamps, flowers of light blooming amidst desert shadows. The scent of jasmine tangled with the night's chill. "I have worn gold like armor long enough," he murmured, voice rough and low. "Yet beneath it, I am a man haunted by ghosts I thought buried." Her hand brushed his arm, hesitant yet resolute, a fragile tether in the raging storm. "You do not stand alone in this. Whatever the cost, I will face it by your side." The wind slipped through the open doors, carrying whispers of distant prayers. Outside, the city breathed softly, unaware of the battle stirring in marble halls and shadowed hearts. Before the fragile moment could bloom, the chamber doors crashed. Open again. A second figure rushed inside, breath ragged, clutching a sealed scroll smeared with the emblem of the palace. "Your Highness," the envoy gasped, desperation etched into every line of his face. "There are signs, betrayals hidden within these walls, alliances forged in darkness, enemies lurking under the guise of friendship." The Sheikh took the scroll, breaking the seal with deliberate calm that belied the fury rising inside. His eyes devoured inked words that twisted like vipers through his mind. "Betrayal," he whispered, voice a growl steeped in bitter irony. "In the place where loyalty should be unbreakable." He met the woman's unwavering gaze. "We will not survive divided." Her eyes sparkled with a fierce fire. "Our worlds may differ, the palace and the marketplace, but our enemies are one." Nodding, he turned to the assembled shadows beyond the hall. "Prepare, my most loyal. Tonight, the palace will become a battlefield of its own." A sudden creak snapped their attention to the entrance, as tall, graceful footsteps crossed the threshold. From the darkness emerged a figure draped in silks of midnight blue, face partly concealed beneath a delicate veil, the air charged with a current of quiet danger. "She's here," the woman breathed. The Sheikh's eyes darkened like a brewing storm, every fiber alert and burning. "The sister you seek," the visitor whispered with cruel certainty, "has returned." Coming tempest, the returned figure stepped forward, an aura of resilience and haunted sorrow entwining her every movement. She was no longer the frightened girl lost to the desert's cruelty. She carried the cold fire of survival, tempered in shadowed battles no palace could shelter. The Sheikh's mind roared with conflicting images of love betrayed and family torn apart, of power challenged and loyalty tested. As the sister's emerald eyes met his, a flicker of something dangerous and unpredictable sparked, like lightning over silent dunes. The visitor's voice broke the reverie. "She's not alone." A silence, thick and breathless, settled over the grand room. The Sheikh's hand trembled, then clenched into a fist once more, silk whipping softly against stone. The power of destiny is everything now. The true battle was only just beginning. And somewhere, deep inside, beneath the mask of ruler and warrior, his heart whispered a fragile hope, a prayer that whatever darkness she carried, it might still be reclaimed by the light. The chamber still pulsated with the tension of revelation as the black-cloaked visitor's words hung heavily in the air. The billionaire Sheikh's fingers dug into the cold marble balustrade, his knuckles whitening beneath the glimmer of gold embroidery. "She's alive," they echoed inside his mind, fracturing the iron certainty he had painstakingly built. His eyes flickered to the woman beside him, the teacher whose gentle smile had once been just a whisper among the marketplace's cacophony, now the bearer of a truth that threatened to unravel empires. The distant city lights sparkled below like scattered stars, innocent and oblivious to the storm gathering just beyond the palace walls. The scent of jasmine and the cool desert breeze slipped through the open doors, threading the air with fragile calm. Yet beneath this serenity, the winds of change howled relentlessly. "What does she want?" The Sheikh's voice was brittle, layered with frustration and desperation. "What message carries this sister, this weapon forged in shadows?" The visitor's gaze pierced him, voice cold as desert steel. "A demand for reckoning, a summons that could crown you ruler over all sands, or bury your legacy beneath them. She plays a role neither wholly foe nor ally, moving between both with veiled purpose." A breath caught in the woman's throat, her eyes glistening under the chandelier's fractured light. "And her loyalty?" she whispered, a question laced with both hope and dread. The visitor's lips curled in a slow, chilling smile. "That is the blade you must catch before it pierces you." The Sheikh stepped back, the weight of the revelation sinking deeper with every heartbeat. His world shifted violently. A kingdom ruled by gold and command, now fractured by secrets older, darker than the desert nights. His gaze softened momentarily as he glanced at the woman's resolute face. So unyielding despite the burden she carried, the fragile thread of trust between them felt tenuous at best, yet impossibly necessary. "I have cloaked myself in power for too long," he admitted quietly, voice nearly swallowed by the night. "Shielded by silks and fear, believing the past was buried beneath the sands." Her fingers brushed against his arm, a fleeting touch that seared with unspoken promise and shared vulnerability. "You don't stand alone anymore," she said softly. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The storm outside rumbled faintly, the desert wind carrying with it distant prayers, whispered by families unaware of the battle unfolding above their heads. Suddenly, the chamber doors burst open once more, a breathless envoy clattering into the room. His hands shook as he extended a sealed scroll, bearing the mark of earth where loyalty should have been sacred. His gaze returned unwavering to the woman, their shared determination illuminating the shadowed chamber. "We cannot fall divided. Our worlds, palace and street alike, face the same peril." Her eyes burned with steadfast resolve. "Our enemies will exploit every fracture between us, but united, we are a force they cannot break." The Sheikh's nod was silent but resolute. "Prepare, my most loyal. Tonight, this palace becomes both battleground and fortress." A tense stillness followed, broken only by the faint crackling of a candle's flame. Then, a new presence entered, unannounced yet undeniable. From the shadows emerged a figure draped in deep midnight hues, her delicate veil shadowing a face marked by endurance and sorrow. The woman at his side breathed, "She's here." The Sheikh's heart thundered in his chest, a tempest of hope and fear combusting beneath his robes of power. "She has returned," the visitor whispered, voice heavy with portent. "The sister you mourned, lost to the desert, is no longer the frightened girl you remembered." The sister stepped forward, each movement a silent declaration of strength, carved from years of survival. Her emerald eyes met the Sheikh's, the embers of old love and new betrayal flashing in their depths. The room seemed to hold its breath as the weight of history pressed upon them all. "She's not alone," the visitor added, barely above a murmur. A chill swept through the chamber. The golden light from the chandelier fractured into shards of shadow and illumination, mirroring the fragile hope and trembling hand, touching the back of his neck as if to steady himself against the storm within. The silk of his robe whispered cold against his skin, a fragile veneer against the unraveling chaos. He searched the sister's gaze for a sign: loyalty, truth, betrayal. The sister who had been lost had returned, transformed by scars unseen and battles fought far from the palace's blinding gold. "What side do you claim?" His voice was razor-sharp, commanding, yet laced with a raw vulnerability no one had witnessed before. Her lips curved into a shadowed smile, somber yet resolute. "I carry the past, wounds and unforgotten promises, but my allegiance lies beyond crowns and thrones. I answer only to what is just, even if it means standing against you." The Sheikh's breath hitched, a silent storm crashing against the fragile citadel of his heart. The woman beside him stepped forward, unwavering. Her eyes bore into the sister's, a silent vow passing between them, a web of fractured kinship now tangled with duty and desperation. Outside, the desert winds whispered secrets through the night. The palace gates stood wide, the first light of dawn just a distant glow on the horizon. In that suspended moment, beneath the crashing storm of emotion and looming war, the billionaire Sheikh understood one truth with painful clarity. The battle for his empire was no longer just one of swords and spies. It was a war for the soul of his people, his family, and himself. And as the sister's shadow stretched long into the chamber, a single, piercing thought gripped him. No matter what came next, nothing would ever be the same again. The vast chamber breathed with heavy stillness, broken only by the measured steps of the sister as she stepped into the harsh light of the grand room. Her eyes, emerald fires tempered by shadow and sorrow, met the billionaire Sheikh's with a fearless defiance that unsettled the core of his being. She was both a ghost and a storm, a fragment of a past poisoned by betrayal and hardened by survival. The opulent surroundings, the gilded mirrors, the plush carpets, the shimmering chandeliers, felt suddenly trivial, swallowed by the raw tension that vibrated in the air. The sister's presence was a silent challenge, casting long shadows that clawed at the fragile truce between him and the woman who now stood at his side. "Why have you returned?" The Sheikh's voice was steel and restraint, edge sharpened by years of command, but trembling beneath the weight of old wounds, reopened. To destroy the throne I built, to wrench apart the family you once belonged to? She held his gaze unwaveringly, lips pressed into a tight line. I do not come as your enemy, nor your savior, she said, voice low and steady. I come bearing truths this palace refuses to see, truths that could either heal or condemn us all. The woman beside the sheikh stepped forward, fierce yet cautious. We need to know everything. No more secrets. This war is not just waged in silence anymore. The sister's eyes flickered toward her, a trace of recognition mingling with suspicion. I once trusted, but trust is a luxury for the naive. My loyalty is to what is right, even if it means standing apart from those I once called family. A fragile silence stretched between them, as if the very walls themselves held their breath. The sheikh's fingers clenched the edge of the marble balcony, heartbeat quickening like desert thunder. The rebels trained you to be a weapon, he said, voice harsh. But you are still my blood. What is your true allegiance? To them or to this land? Her gaze hardened, unyielding. My allegiance is to justice, not crowns. I have witnessed the suffering born in silence beneath your golden rule. I seek not to overthrow for chaos, but to awaken a kingdom that's been sleeping on the edge of its own ruin. A sharp intake of breath escaped the woman's lips. And what of your message? What winds do you carry to these halls of power? Change, the sister whispered, her voice threading through the vast chamber like a desert breeze. A promise and a warning. Change that cannot be stopped, no matter how firmly the gates are locked or how tightly the courtier's whisper lies. The sheikh swallowed, eyes dimming with the weight of history and the heavy dust of betrayal lingering in his soul. His realm, so carefully woven with gold and secrets, now threatened to unravel with every word spoken here tonight. Do you bring war? His tone was nearly a plea. Or is there hope still beneath this storm? She stared long and hard, her silhouette wrapped in midnight hues, shadows playing over the scars etched beneath silk. Hope, she said finally, but it is fragile, and it asks for a price that few are willing to pay. The chamber fell into a taut silence. The only sound, a distant call to prayer, carried softly on the evening wind. Outside, the desert awaited, like an indifferent witness to the fragile threads of fate being pulled tight inside those walls. Suddenly, the palace doors opened again with a sonorous creak. A servant entered briskly, hands trembling, bearing a sealed letter marked with the royal emblem. The sheikh's fingers instinctively reached for it, eyes narrowing as the seal broke apart like a shattering promise. The border forces have reported unrest, the servant whispered. A faction loyal to the rebels has launched a strike at the eastern gates. It's not just a rebellion anymore. It's an all-out war. The woman at the sheikh's side exchanged a glance with him, both sensing the encroaching storm. The sister's expression hardened imperceptibly, a steel forging anew in the fire of imminent conflict. We have no time to debate, the sheikh's voice rang out, his command returning in waves of authority. yet mixed with a raw undercurrent of vulnerability. Gather my closest allies. We will defend this empire, not just with swords, but with truth. He turned back to the sister, the lines between hate, hope, and kinship twisting into something almost unrecognizable. But understand this: betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from those you love. If your loyalty wavers, if your message seeks ruin, then you will face the full fury of my wrath. A flicker of something unreadable crossed the sister's features. I do not seek your ruin. Then prove it, he challenged, voice low and charged. Because tonight, the palace gates will stand as the battleground for more than just armies. A sudden gust of wind swept through the open doors, swirling jasmine and desert dust into a chaotic dance around their feet. The night beyond loomed vast and merciless, a mirror to the war raging within them all. Her hand reached out again, this time resting boldly on his arm, a silent pact forged in shadows and uncertain light. Whatever comes, she vowed softly, we face it together. The sister took a slow step forward, eyes gleaming with the first trace of a fragile truce. For this land, for the family shattered by secrets, for a future yet unwritten. The billionaire Sheikh's heart thundered, a wild desert storm caught between love and duty, power and redemption. The fate of empires, the weight of betrayal, and the hope for renewal, all balanced precariously on this moment. And as the first pale tendrils of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a fragile glow through the towering windows, the sister's voice echoed like a vow spoken to the rising sun. The war for the soul of this empire begins now. But before the light fully claimed the night, a whisper slipped through the chamber, chilling and sharp. She's not alone. The room, once thick with tension and uncertainty, now embraced a fragile stillness under the ghostly light of dawn. The sister's emerald eyes, sharp and unyielding. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze, with a mixture of defiance and something softer, an unspoken plea for understanding beyond the shadows of past betrayals. He inhaled deeply, the cool morning air filling his lungs like a promise of renewal. The golden threads of his robe caught the first light of day, shimmering faintly as though caught between the storm behind him and the fragile hope ahead. Your return has shaken the very foundations of this empire, he said quietly, voice steady despite the weight pressing upon his chest. But it has also forced truths long buried into the light. She nodded, her stance unwavering, but her eyes revealing the toll of years spent in exile and conflict. I have come to show you that loyalty is not blind obedience. It is born of justice. And the justice this land has long begged for. Beside the Sheikh, the woman who had once been a simple teacher stepped forward, her dignity and courage woven in equal measure with the strength of the secrets she had carried. We stand together now, she said softly, not as rulers and rebels, but as keepers of a future worth fighting for. A silence wrapped them like a cocoon, the moment pregnant with the possibility of peace or ruin. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, golden sands meeting a sky painted with the soft blush of morning. The distant hum of the awakening city was a subtle symphony to their fragile truce. The Sheikh's hand trembled slightly as he lowered it from the marble balcony railing. "Then show me your message," he urged, voice heavy with hope and caution intertwined. The sister's expression softened, her resolve bending just enough to reveal the humanity beneath. "It is a call to abandon the cycle of vengeance that has poisoned our people," she revealed. "To rebuild, not through fear and control, but through truth, compassion, and justice." He closed his eyes briefly. The memories of wars fought, alliances broken, and love lost, flashing like fleeting embers. The empire he had ruled with iron and gold was no longer enough. What he sought now was something deeper, a legacy not etched in power, but in peace. "When I first met her," he gestured toward the woman beside him, "I saw only defiance. Now I see the strength to heal." Her fingers found his in a quiet, unyielding grip, a wordless vow, binding their fates in a pact forged beyond politics and pain. The sister stepped closer, her voice a whisper with the weight of truth. "This empire must welcome all its children, no matter the wounds they carry. Only then can it flourish." Outside the palace walls, a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine, a subtle herald of transformation. The courtyard below began to stir with life, vendors preparing their stalls, children's laughter spilling free, and the first prayer calls threading gracefully through the winding streets. Within the chambers, the tension that had gripped them for months began to dissolve like morning mist. The enemies within were revealed, but so too was the power of unity. The Sheikh straightened, the commanding fire in his eyes rekindled, but softer now, tempered by wisdom and the light of forgiveness. "We will dismantle the shadows that once blinded us," he declared, "not through harsh dominion, but through open hearts." The sister's smile, tentative yet genuine, blossomed. "Then we fight not just for survival, but to give our people a future unburdened by the ghosts of the past." The woman, no longer merely a teacher, but a beacon of resilience, pressed closer into his side. In her gaze, he found the peace he had long deferred, the warmth to melt the cold fortress of his loneliness. Together, they turned toward the rising sun, its golden rays spilling warmth over the endless desert dunes, their empire stretching beyond sand and stone into a new dawn. The palace gates, once ominous and impenetrable, stood open now, not as barriers, but as invitations to a world reborn. With the first light kissing their faces, the billionaire Sheikh whispered, "This is our beginning." And as the city awoke beneath the vast sky, its heart beating in sync with theirs, the story of love, forgiveness, and hope etched itself into the sands forever, an eternal testament to the power of truth and the courage to change. In the liminal space between night and day, sword and olive branch, they found their destiny united. Their journey, steeped in pain and passion, had led them here, to a peace hard won, a love fiercely claimed, and a future bright as the desert sun. The empire was theirs, not because they had conquered, but because they had chosen to trust, to forgive and to love. And in that choice, all wounds began to heal.